Uncut and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness with your hosts John McCaskill and Will Schneider. Here we focus on helping men and those with men in their lives solve some of life's complex challenges through understanding the practices of mindfulness and how they can help. Each episode is in an environment free of judgment and criticism with a focus on authenticity and inner peace. Let's dig in.
Let's dig in. I love that. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness. This is the podcast where we delve into the art and practice of mindfulness and its impact on mental health and overall well-being. I'm John McCaskill, your co-host, along with Will Schneider over there in New York City. And today we have a fascinating and insightful episode lined up for you. We'll be speaking with two exceptional guests, Jeff Harris and Mark Paske, both successful executives who have harnessed the power of mindfulness in their everyday lives. We've called this show Everyman Mindfulness Part 2, or in the tradition of the 1990s Hot Shots movie series, Everyman Mindfulness Part 2. Mark and Jeff are both leaders in their respective fields and are both avid mindfulness practitioners. Mark is a father, coach, and global VP of sales at Forta, a cybersecurity company. And Jeff is a rare disease survivor, endurance athlete, father, and chief revenue officer of Order My Gear, OMG. Today, we are going to talk about what their practices look like, how mindfulness impacts their lives in the workplace and at home, what are the greatest challenges with mindfulness, the power of a group and accountability, and much, much more. Will, I'm going to turn it over to you, brother. Great to see you. How are you? Lost your audio.
Mic is on mute. There we go. Right? Isn't that always? Hey, you're on mute, Will. So hey, good to be back, John, Mark, and Jeff. Pleasure to have you on the show today. So just everybody out there, just ask this question and answer it for yourself. Is it time to get away, to unplug from all your emails, social media, and all the digital chaos? And maybe imagine yourself in a serene, nature-filled location, releasing your stress and anxiety, hitting reset, rejuvenating your body, your mind, your soul, and having fun. This could be you if you join us in our New York Upstate Mindfulness Adventure Retreat on May 18th to the 21st. We're going to breathe, we're going to move, we're going to get mindful during these 4 days, 3-night immersive experience that includes afterwards a post-integration 4-week program. So if you want to learn more and sign up, you can head to mentalkingmindfulness.com/retreat to book your spot before they're all gone. Again, that's mentalkingmindfulness.com/retreat. Also, hey, we join our email list and we'll give you a free mindfulness workbook. And by simply texting mindful, right? MINDFUL, mindful to 3377. That's mindful to 33777. 7777. Okay, and lastly, hey, thank you for. I didn't say one.
So
number,
many sevens.
So too many sevens, right? And lastly, hey, hit us up on YouTube. We have snippets over there and different content that can help you to become more mindful. And that's at youtube.com/@mentalkingmindfulness. Thanks for joining us over there. We're going to jump right into everybody. We're going to ground into a 5-breath, a meditation practice. So if you're able to close your eyes or if you need to fix your seat, go right ahead. You can do this while you're driving, mowing the lawn, maybe just at the gym. Just stop, put the weights down, and just take these 5 breaths. But let's start with a nice little grounding exhale out your mouth. Let it go all the way out. See if you can really hit bottom and feel that emptiness for a moment. Take a big inhale through your nose for 5 seconds. Big balloon breath, filling from bottom all the way to the top. And exhale out the mouth. Nice and smooth, and let go and soften your body a little bit more. Again, in breath 5. Out breath smooth and easy. Few more. In, big giant breath. Feel that balloon filling in your torso. Exhale out, nice and easy, smoothly, relaxing. 2 more in. Let that go. Easy like a soft breeze on a warm summer day. All right, one more time. In. Let that go. Good, and slowly you can maybe move your head, neck, shoulders a little bit, get some micro movements going in your body, and open your eyes. And we are live right here with Mark and Jeff and John and Men Talking Mindfulness. So thank everybody for joining us. John, let's lay some
just
background
jump
here,
right in,
context here with these wonderful gentlemen that are joining us today for Everyman's Mindfulness.
There we go. Everyman Mindfulness. Yeah, and real quick, I got the question here in the text or in the messages. It's 33777. So 2 3s and 3 7s.
I screwed that up every time.
It's okay. So 33777. So all right, let's jump into this. All right, so Jeff, Mark, such an honor to be here with you guys. As I said before we hit record, it's so great to have good friends on the show to share what it is that mindfulness has done in your lives. So let's backtrack a little bit. Could you share a little bit about your personal journeys with mindfulness and how you came to incorporate mindfulness in your lives? And we'll start with Jeff, just to keep it kind of clean. I'll try to remember to throw it back to each one of you guys back and forth. But if I forget, just jump right on in. But let's start with Jeff.
All right. My goodness, where to start? Right on. I was hoping Mark was going to go first, lead the way. So I think my journey, honestly, it comes back to before I even really came across the term mindfulness. It came around to emotional intelligence. I'll be honest, throughout my career, throughout my life in the military and then in corporate America, I wasn't the most patient person, quite honestly. And I ended up getting assigned an emotional intelligence coach out of New Zealand many, many years ago, about a decade ago. And worked with him, and it helped to really raise my awareness into not only learning about my own emotions, but obviously, interacting with other people, because our emotions really drive our behaviors. And this was my introduction into kind of mindfulness. And eventually that took off to later exploring meditation, which to me is more of a practice. Mindfulness is really a way of being. And as a leader, my job is to be mindful of my emotions and the emotions of those around me every single day. That's what really makes me the most effective, and that's become a big part of my life. As you mentioned before the show, I was diagnosed with a rare disease years ago, and long story short, I couldn't eat food. I had to drink every meal from a cup for an entire year, except it wasn't really like, hey, just picking up a cup and slurping down a protein shake. It could take me 45 minutes to an hour to drink something like this. It was extremely painful. It felt like somebody was stabbing me in the chest. And I didn't know when it was going to end. It ended up going for a whole year, and I slept in a chair, mostly this chair, because I was CEO of an international organization based out of New Zealand. So I just worked around the clock. Here's a little secret: when you can't eat, you can't sleep, just stay really busy. It keeps you out of the kitchen. And it was the most productive year of my life, honestly, because I had to be so mindful in the moment, because I didn't know when I was going to eat again. So my only choice was just to be aware and be thankful for what I had going on right then. And so I practiced a lot of meditation, a lot of breathing exercises, and it really helped me to learn a lot about and master, not really master, because every day is a challenge and growth, patience. And that's what's really helped me out a lot too as an executive. Instead of having a knee-jerk reaction to any little thing that happens, mindfulness has helped me to really foster my ability to be patient, to be a better listener, to be a better coach, to provide better feedback, in the moment of what's going on. And I always look at that. I use the analogy of rock climbing. We live in Colorado. Well, Will and I do, or I'm sorry, John and I do. And here, whenever you're out, if you're at the climbing gym or you're out in the mountains and you're climbing, it's one thing, a rock climber, they get immediate feedback, because if you do something really, really well on the wall, you could stay on the wall. And if you don't, hey, you're going to take a quick drop, hopefully not too far. And the same thing, if you're out climbing a mountain and you see a climber and they start to fall, well, what happens? They self-correct. They start grabbing and they self-correct. And as a leader, what you want to do is you don't want to wait until you see a climber or your employee starts to take a fall and self-correct. So you got to be really mindful of what's happening so that you can provide that instant feedback, because feedback is what ultimately takes performance to another level. So I'm not sure if I did a great job of sharing my whole story there, but yeah, I'd say even from my time in the military all the way up till probably a decade ago, when it came to meditation, mindfulness, that was not my thing. It was like I was
Sure.
go 100 miles an hour. It's a high speed, low drag is the mantra. And eventually things happened in my life where I was moving up the executive ladder, the corporate ladder, and also having personal challenges in my life where I had to slow down to speed up. And now it's part of my every single day. I started off with meditation, mindfulness practices, gratitude journal. I kind of like book in the day, and that's how I get into my evening as well, so that I can kind of create this day type compartment to really interact and bring my best self to my family. And so we can get into all that. I want Mark to share some of his thoughts as well. But without daily practice of meditation and being mindful of my surroundings, even like mindful eating and all that stuff, I could not function the way I do on any given day, doing what I do. It really helps me to stay calm and just take a breath. And like I've learned on this show from one of your former guests, BAMO, breathe and move on.
That's
That's a
right.
big part of my life.
Yes, we
Yeah.
love that. We love that. Dr. Seth Hickerson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
yep.
But thank you for that, Jeff. And we're going to talk to Mark in a second, but I would like to just to put this in your head, and maybe Mark, we can talk about this as well after you kind of share a bit of your story. Is like what was the practices or whatever you did before with like the high speed, low drag life? Like what was the get up? What was the whole, whatever the habits were or the behaviors or the practices, and then switching over to mindfulness. I think it'd be very good for our listeners to hear, because so many people have that high speed, low drag life, and to hear the
Yeah.
contrast and would be great. So maybe put a thought on that. And Mark, how are you,
Yep.
sir? Let's hear your story, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm always humbled, first of all, to be with you guys. But I am on the right podcast, being an everyman. I'm not sure Jeff is an everyman. I think he might be on the wrong
Mark,
end of the herd.
I got a question later about your daily routines, and then
Yeah.
I'm kind of hesitant to ask that question because I think we're going to quickly show that Jeff is not an everyday man or an everyman.
We'll expose him on this podcast for sure. But yeah, my journey around mindfulness is, I think back, I actually lived internationally as a kid, 9 to 12 years old. I lived in Singapore, and I got exposed in Singapore. Is such a melting pot. You got exposed to a lot of different spiritual experiences, I would say. And as I reflect back, I think that was probably my first recognition that there was something other than the type of religion I was practicing. And spirituality and religion, I kind of think are obviously very related to mindfulness. So I think my kind of early exposure was then. From an adult perspective, I took a class 10, 12 years ago. It was a leadership training class. So my company, big company, had brought a bunch of us together. And one of the things that they brought to the table was EQ and IQ training, similar to what Jeff had mentioned, and getting some coaching and enablement there, which was useful. And then they brought in a meditation and mindfulness guru, and I don't recall who it was. But we had a pretty immature reaction. I'd say I was probably one of the leaders of the immaturity at that point. And the expression they used that got me giggling was "noticed your nostrils," and they were basically trying to get us to like breathe properly. And being the immature we were, we didn't handle it well. So my first real practice was not successful, and that was pretty much on me. But years later, I actually looked up. I found you guys a few years ago in your podcast in 2021 in May, and it was a podcast on fatherhood and mindfulness. And I just was kind of Googling it, and I randomly found you. We're at in the part of the pandemic where none of us could go anywhere. So I had a rowing machine. I was just listening to podcasts on this rowing machine for hours on end. And that really, I'd say over the last 2+ years is really what got me going. And to make it something that's habitual, as Jeff said, it's just become part of a daily routine. And then some recent experiences with a real immersive experience over the first 2 months of this year, January, February, of doing meditation practices every single day. And it is now, I'd say, at another level of commitment to it, but also I'd say benefit is pretty tangible as well. And it's like putting on your shoes in the morning now. It's kind of something that I can't go without.
That's awesome, man. And I know you shared with me during that immersive event, and I'll share it. It's part of the Deliberate Discomfort Challenge with Mission 60. You share with me taking that and sharing it with other members of your family. Can you just touch on that quickly?
Yeah, so we went through a tough event as a family last September. We lost my dad, who was a West Point grad, and just a pretty important person to the whole family, along with being my personal hero. And so tough transition as a family when you go through that loss. And so I'm lucky that my mom and my sister and her family, they all live close by. So I was able to take some time with mom and actually introduce the first, in the early part of the Deliberate Discomfort Challenge. It was really brief. It was a couple minutes of a time of doing meditations led by John. And so we had a recording that we did every day and each week, and then we kind of upped the time. And I couldn't believe that we went from 2 minutes to 5 minutes to 10 minutes. And then eventually, we'd sit down and we'd kind of just take the initial breaths, get in the chair, get comfortable. And it actually became a really important part of our time together, and still to this day. So we have some of the recordings that we still are doing. But I do think there's some irony that, my dad being a West Point grad and you being a Naval Academy grad, that the person who's helping my mom through a difficult time is a Navy guy whispering into her ear. So.
I love it. And before we get to Jeff's, coming back to your question, Will, I'd love, since you mentioned your dad and the West Point piece, if we could just share that little personal story of how Jeff and Mark are connected through West Point. It's crazy. I'll turn it over to you guys.
Go for it, Mark.
Yeah, so Jeff and I met up through another kind of virtual group that was got connected through another mutual friend of ours, Joel Neeb, and we were just, during the pandemic especially, just kind of putting basic challenges out there each month to try to just focus on something other than the fact that we couldn't go live our lives freely at that point. And through a series of connections, we started making the rounds. There was like maybe 10 or 15 people on the text chain, and we started making personal introductions. And Jeff and I linked up, and we found an incredible coincidence that his father-in-law and my father were actually at West Point at the same time. And we learned further that there was a story that my dad lost his mom his second week of school, his plebe year. And it was a tough time for him, obviously. The identical thing happened to Jeff's father-in-law, who was a plebe when my dad was a senior. And he was with his father-in-law and said, "Hey, I'm talking to this guy, Mark Paske. Do you know Ray Paske?" And the rest of this is unbelievable. Jeff, I'll let you tell the other part of it because you were the one who was there with your father-in-law.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, we were having, it seemed like it was a holiday, but I remember we were sitting outside by the fire.
Involved, I know.
Yeah. Yeah, we were sitting outside by the fire, and just got to chatting and was telling him about the Uncommon group and who all was in there, and I was like, yeah, there's Mark Paske. His father went to West Point, and then my father-in-law Marvin Wooten, who passed away last July as well, and it was really hard on our family. He was like, "Oh, is his father Ray Paske? He mentored me when I came on." Because when he joined West Point, and it was just like this kind of shock and awe, like what a small world. It's like here's Mark and I. We had never met in person. We've been doing these monthly challenges, just kind of like just to pass the time, and just a small world. It's crazy, and now it's 3-4 years later, and here we are still. And this month we're doing a ruck challenge.
That's right.
Now we're sitting here on the show. So yeah, it's small world.
It's wild, man. Wild. All right, Will, you want to come back to your question, man, about the high speed, low drag?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it'd be important for a lot of people to hear that, for Jeff in this case, and Mark, if you have a similar story, please, what life is like, before you slow things down, become more mindful, begin to absorb the practices. And like you said earlier, Mark, I can't imagine my life without them. So what was like before, I think would be a great contrast as we dive a little bit deeper into how mindfulness has helped us. So what was life like before you kind of dug into mindfulness with this? I love you said fast pace, low drag, right? Which is
high speed, low drag.
High speed, low drag, right?
Yeah, yeah. What was that Disney cartoon with the emotions? Do you all remember that? The
The
little
Emoji
motion
Movie?
characters.
Oh,
Yeah, the emotion movie from Disney. I can't remember the name of it.
Oh,
it's
Inside Out.
it's
Inside
so
Out, yeah.
Inside Out,
And
yeah.
so inside, and they have the kind of the primary emotions in there. They got like fear,
mhm.
sadness, disgust, and anger. And literally, my life was that little anger dude. And my wife now, she jokes around.
Ah!
We watched that movie, and she was like, "Wow, that little dude with the head on fire, that was totally you. Like when I met you, it's like this smallest little thing." And here's a big part of my story that I don't share a whole lot is I learned back in early 2020 that I my whole life, I'm going to be 49 this weekend. I didn't realize that I was on the spectrum, and I grew up neurodiverse with Asperger's and wasn't diagnosed until early 2020. And it helped to explain a lot of these little things because I have a certain way that I see and structure my day, and any little thing that's out of line, like I travel every week, and before I got
Mm,
into mindfulness practice, a plane could be 2 minutes delayed, and I'd flip out. I'm like the little anger guy, like, oh my god, you
oh,
said it was going to
yeah.
be on this time, and it's not on this time. And now I actually, my life has changed to where I'm typically on a flight at 5 a.m. every Monday morning, except at least one Monday out of the month. And at 5 a.m. it's like I use this time for meditation. It's totally different. I put on my noise canceling headphones, and I just look at this as an opportunity. I'm like, here's the time to breathe and just like gain space in my life, and I love it. Whereas before, I just sit there like this little hothead, just blaring away. So my life has changed a lot because I was all go no quit, and I grew up and I know Paske, you have a background in martial arts as well. And my thing was as in martial arts, we learned a lot about awareness. We didn't call it mindfulness then. But my thing was I was angry guy, so I would just go beat the shit out of heavy bag every single day. And when I grew up, my thing was how many heavy bags could I go through in a year to like destroy them, and then my dad would be like, awesome, we'll get you another one. Because that was my thing. It was like, I'm just going to take out my anger. And now my life has totally changed. I don't beat on a heavy bag. I sit and just calmly breathe. And what I've learned is like how we breathe is how we interact with really everything, everyone. It's so crucial, and it's changed my life. From being hot headed, because that's not something that's going to help you to be effective in corporate America is to blow off steam. So my thing too was early in my career I'd go out at lunch and just run. And I used to joke that I'm the master of my emotions. I have two emotions, and it's calmest person in the world, silverback ape. And there's an incredible hawk behind me. That's because the kids, and there's incredible hawk pictures in my office. They used to always joke my dad's the Incredible Hulk. It's like he's like this super nerdy Dr. Banner until he's not, and then he's and mindfulness has changed my life to where I'm pretty much Banner 99.99% of the time.
Nice.
And it takes a lot to get me riled up. It's like any little thing that happens, and I'm all data centric. I'm always looking at my heart rate, my sleep, and everything else. Yeah, it's like I'm a data guy, and and it takes a lot to, even like when I go and give like a speech on leadership or go tell my story to a company, it takes a lot to get my heart rate even going, at all. Just like it's helped me to just be, it's like our emotions. It's like I always equate it to like the ocean. It's like sometimes it's a raging storm, which was pretty much my whole life until I was introduced to these concepts, and now it's just a calm sea. And it takes a lot to get that sea going. Hopefully, you don't see that
I
go.
think I
Yeah.
think it also has something to do with the fact that you're running some ridiculous number of miles every day and getting on the bike and knocking out 10,000 push-ups, and that's
There,
why your heart
there
rate
is
doesn't go up.
There is that aspect of it. Yeah, yeah. So I do channel I do channel my rage in other ways. Is I just let the big
Yeah.
dog eat and just let him run, and I like to ride and run. But now I use that most of my training. I'll be honest, because John, I train a lot. It's mostly
Yeah,
zone two. I look at training as like a giant pyramid, and the base is your zone two training as far as your endurance, stamina,
right.
and the peak of that is your strength and kind of your hit stuff. And so most of my training, because I never take a day off, is really zone two stuff, so your body can recover. It's boring, but it's when I listen to podcasts and learn. So listen to audiobooks.
Yeah, yeah, that's another thing you guys do. I see that what I call the shelf esteem, all the books behind you on the shelves, and I see some behind Mark too, and I've got the virtual screen behind me, but I do have my shelf esteem back there too, and it's several books on that shelf esteem are books that we have shared in our group, from Kotler books to stuff on performance to stuff on emotions, and it's really great to be a part of that group and of men sharing this kind of stuff. But then I also don't want that to hijack the show. But so let's talk about, you talked, Jeff, you touched on this. Mark, if you could touch on it a little bit more. What role has mindfulness, now that you've been practicing for a while, and specifically this last 2 months, or rather the first 2 months of the year at least, you started to really delve into it. What role has mindfulness played in your professional career as an executive, and how has that influenced your leadership style, your management style, and maybe even the culture around you?
Yeah, man, so many ways. I'd say one, just stopping to notice, like having the discipline to stop and notice. And I was listening to Jeff and thinking about the mode of your career when you're full throttle all the time, go, go, go. I had a leader that worked for me years ago who became a good friend, who said, "Hey, Mark, we really appreciate what you're doing for charging up that hill, and we all like following you. But every now and then it'd be nice if you just stopped and looked behind to see how far back we were, because you're not really relatable to us when you don't." And so it was an ask for vulnerability was one. So I think mindfulness has helped me just be more in touch with how I'm coming across and how I might be being received by those around me, for one, on the professional level. From a leadership standpoint, I've decided to share a lot about my personal journey, whereas before I think I might have just kept it personal, just in terms of how it's helped me. And to the extent where, John, you noticed I put it on my LinkedIn profile.
I did. I love it. I love it.
I'm proud of it, for one, because it has taken a lot of discipline to make that something that I would say I do. I come a long way from noticing nostrils and giggling, but permission to be silly about it at first too. Like, hey, give yourself a little grace on it. And I've had a number of kind of people younger in their career, or people who are leaders for the first time, asked, what are some things of advice? And it's one of the pieces of advice I give them. It's not just about, the hard skills around, what do you do? I'm in the sales field. So what do you do to run a sales team, or how do you manage pipeline and all those kind of blocking and tackling things? It's managing your whole life. And, I think especially over the last few years, I think we all probably have a little bit more appreciation and gratitude for things that we have that are good in our life, and the ability to, be free and flexible with that. And I think it's enabled me to tap into that and just, bring a little more gratitude, a little more self-awareness, and to pass that along to others. And also to pass along that, you don't have to do a handstand on top of your head for 60 minutes every day to be a mindfulness practitioner. You can take 2 minutes and just do a quick Wim Hof and breathe right through it, whatever's going on.
Amen.
Yeah. Well, let's keep talking about those practices. I think that'd be important, to hear like what your, like, maybe do you have a morning routine? Is there a practice that you kind of plug in the afternoon that kind of keeps you fresh and focused? Is there something at the end of the day? So just what kind of practices do you find yourself going back to because of the experience that it provides you? Or either one. So Jeff or Mark, go for it, Jeff. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a chair that I go to when I'm at the
Mark.
I got a place that I like to go to, where it's like, if I need a quick 5-minute break in between meetings, I go. That's where I go. I remove myself from the room I'm in right now, and I have a place that I go to. So I've made a ritual out of it. I think for me that's important. But I think one of the best things I learned about mindfulness and meditation is that you can literally do it anywhere, under any circumstances. And so if you're on a plane, if you have noise canceling headphones, you can meditate. If you don't have those things, you can meditate. You can do mindful moments anywhere you are. And I think for me, it's one, I have a little breathing routine that I like to do if I'm not listening to you guys or something that's guiding me, that I just kind of internalized. And if I can partake in the ritual in a little more formal way, I really like to do it and just get in a comfortable chair and kind of follow the breathing instructions to a T. And it's incredibly powerful. And, I mentioned also in the personal side and personal life, what a great tool when you have family stress going on. It doesn't have to be the loss of a loved one. It could be anything.
Yeah.
I witnessed firsthand at the kind of most extreme end, at the loss of a close loved one, how powerful it's been and how it helped another person in my family, my mom in this case, and what a bonding experience as a grown man to be able to do that with your mom. That was a really cool experience.
Yeah. What's your morning like, Mark? Do you have anything what do you do when you kind of get up in the morning? Do you have mindfulness practice you plug in? Just curious, because that's like a big,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great way to start the day, is to have like a routine. And I'm just wondering what that might look like for you.
Yeah, I mean, in the vein of digital detox, we know it's terrible to get on the devices right away. Sometimes I do. I'm not perfect at it, but I try to bring a little mindfulness by looking outside, regardless of what kind of weather's going on. I'm in the Northeast New York, New Jersey area, but try to get a little peek outside. We get a little animal activity in our backyard from time to time, some rabbits and squirrels and things like that. So if I can see something like that, that's a little different than staring at a screen or jumping right into a news feed. So that's a good way to start the day. But during that deliberate discomfort challenge, which was 60 days, I would do my gratitude journal in the morning. And typically I would try to meditate first, clear my head, and then do my gratitude journal. And it was a pretty powerful combo to do that in that order for me. I know other people like to do it in different orders. So, and then, get some physical activity mixed in there of some type, and we're focused on rucking this month. I don't know whose idea that was, Harris. Was it John's idea?
I think it was SEAL team up here.
I think
I picked up rucking as a discipline at 50 years old. You guys learned it when you were early.
I haven't done it in a while, and I'll tell you, I threw that 50-pound pack on the other day for the first time in a while, and I felt it. I felt it for sure.
It put some age on that. So I think mixing in some physical activity. I'm not at the extreme at Jeff. We already have identified Jeff's not an everyday man from that perspective, but he's one of the ones who has kind of inspired me to bring more discipline into just what I do in general in terms of staying active and the stuff outside of work and the things that cause stress, and having a stress relief, and keep yourself in the banner mode and away from the Hulk mode.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Do you see your gratitude journaling? Did you see it begin to kind of matriculate in your day anyway, or how has that kind of helped you? Because that could be such a key practice for anyone that's listening, just to simply gratitude journal, for 10, 15 minutes in the morning, and really being thankful, for even the littlest things to the biggest things. And it can really, so has that, did you see that beginning to activate in the rest of your life, Mark, by doing that journaling?
That's interesting. So the gratitude journal started like I was writing a book, when I felt a tremendous amount of pressure to write really, really thoughtful, insightful things. And then you kind of run out of those after a couple of weeks. And then you start to realize those aren't the only things you're grateful for. And I do think about Jeff a lot with this. I'm sure there's days where he's just grateful that he can swallow food. And, I think about as I went down the path of that 60-day challenge, I started writing things, not out of desperation because I ran out of ideas, but the most basic things that you appreciate that you should be grateful for in your life. And they were small. They were usually really small. And it was, it felt really cool to think about those things.
Awesome. Thanks.
I want to, you touched on discipline there, Mark. And, we've touched on the fact that the three of us are part of this group. We call it the Uncommon. And it's I don't know, like you mentioned before, Mark, maybe 15 guys on this text thread. Most of us haven't actually met one another, but we're all on this text thread, and we hold one another accountable. And every month we come up with a new challenge, whether that's a physical or mental challenge. We share books that we're reading, and I think we are all constantly striving to be better men, better people, better fathers, better husbands, better business leaders. And again, we're constantly challenging one another physically, professionally, and mentally even. Can you guys touch on for you how important being a part of a group is for you personally and professionally, and then potentially even how that may have influenced your mindfulness practice.
Yeah, I think for me, being a part of this group in particular, it holds me to a higher standard. Because it'd be so. I consider myself kind of disciplined. I have very strict routines that I do every single day. But honestly, my superpower comes from being neurodiverse. A lot of things that people might say, "Wow, he's so disciplined." It's just part of my program. It's part of my operating system, and I really lean into that heavily. I mean, otherwise, little red fire guy can pop out and
Yeah.
somebody can
Yeah.
interrupt my daily routine, which was a big thing. When my wife and I got married, and this is our second marriage. We have 3 kids between both of us, and one of the things that I used to do a lot of strategic planning for companies, and one of the questions that we would do each quarter is, hey, start, stop, keep. What should we start doing? What should we stop doing? So we were on a ski trip, my wife and I, and she's like, oh, what do you got this week? It's like, oh, I'm doing this strategic planning with this company. She's like, what are some questions you ask them? And so I went through a bunch of questions. I go, we don't, you know what would be interesting? I go, we always do this exercise called start, stop. I go, would you be interested in doing that? As a take the break off the table, what are 3 things I could start doing? Or what are 3 things I could stop doing to really improve our relationship? And when
Wow.
it got to me, it was pretty easy because my wife, she gets up even earlier than I do. I mean, she's like, boom, 4 a.m., just like off the walls going. I get up early, but I don't necessarily like it. And the last thing I want is somebody to talk to me. I'm just like, and so my first thing was when I get up in the morning, if you could stop talking to me until I say something to you, it'd be awesome. She's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, just don't speak to me for like 3 hours. And it changed our relationship. It was
In
huge.
a good way, I
Anyways,
hope.
go with that. But to me, being a part of this group, it helps to it helps to push me. That challenging each other, and then there's a lot of sarcasm involved, obviously, which I really it really inspires me. And there's some folks on there more sarcastic than others, and I love it. And it's I think one thing too is like the credibility of the people that are in this group that builds trustworthiness. It inspires us. It really it's a team that we're there, we're reunited. It's not something that is any divisional, and I look at it as like it's an opportunity to be competitive, but to me, to compete means to strive together. Just like last month, Paske, hey, we finished the push-up challenge together, and at the end of the day, it's like it still pushed us out of our comfort zones. We may not have won, but it helped us to push ourselves to a higher level. And I think because there's in the mornings like this morning up at 4:30. I did not want to go through my morning routine, which I could get into, and a lot of it is just like, oh my goodness. But I also start with my gratitude journal as well, and helps me to get me in the right frame of mind. And I don't feel like doing these things every single day, but we have to act our way into feeling. And uh,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think that's really one of the key things. Who was it? William James was said, I don't sing because I'm happy. I'm happy because I sing. In other words,
Yeah.
we have to act our way into a feeling, and that's a lot of my morning. Is doing that. But being part of a group, it helps me to hold myself to a much higher standard. And I think what we have to, our friend Joel Neeb, he has a saying, is which I know the first part he got from Jim Rohn. It's like we become the sum of the 5 people we hang around with.
Yeah.
And he's like, try to also be a part of a group where you're bringing down the average. And it's like I look at this group, and it's like, okay, it's like I look at some of the folks in there. I'm like, why am I here? It's like this is crazy. And so I feel like I'm bringing down the average a lot. It helps me to hold myself to a higher standard, to where whether it's physical challenge or mental challenges or reading or just whatever it is. It's like I feel like I have. It's just like in the military. It's like it's like, hey, if I'm gonna earn this title, or it's like for you, John, I'm gonna wear this trident. I'm gonna earn this every day, and it's
Right.
part of like comic, or it's part of that camaraderie that I miss from the military. And there's a lot of military folks in there, and I think that's what I love.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah. Thank you. What are some of those? What is your morning routine there, Jeff? Like, if you can share that with us, it'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Get ready.
Yeah. Well, number
I'm going to
one,
go ahead and drink my
Reveille,
Monster
talk
as
to
I
me.
prepare for this.
Yeah. So, so I strive to get up around 4:30. in the morning, and I start off my day with my gratitude journal. And I've switched from different things over the years, from notebook to Remarkable to now I just have it on my iPad, and I have a template that I do every day. And my gratitude, my goal every day with my gratitude journal is to list at least three things I'm thankful for, and I cannot repeat whatever it is that I'm thankful for. Absolutely not. And try to cover as much detail as possible. And Paske's right. At least one of those things is typically some meal that I've had. My wife is an extraordinary cook, so the year I couldn't eat food, it was really, I mean, it was really challenging. It was like she was tormenting me every day. It's like, it smells amazing. It's like, yeah, this is so good. It's like, yeah, shh. But anyways, I start off with that, and then I do a mindfulness practice, a meditation practice. And right now, I've been consumed with one. I sent this book to John a while back. It's a resilience meditation, and it's a religious meditation. And I it's 10 minutes in the morning, and it's like my food. It helps me to center myself and to really just take a pause, and get myself into the right frame of mind for the day. And then I go into what I call my physical fitness type of routine. And I do a 10-minute plank minimum every single day. And I've done that for, gosh, over a decade.
Forearm
probably.
plank for 10 minutes.
I do
Is that what you
5 minutes up, and then 5 minutes on my elbows. And it's to just sit mindfully in the suck.
That is a
And
meditation.
and this is my physical meditation, as in calm down, don't be the guy with his head on fire today. And it helps. And so a lot of times what I do during that time is I watch inspiring videos on YouTube, and if you're part of this group, you're on the receiving end on a lot of those.
I love those.
And some of them
Love
I
them.
watch every single day. And it helps me. I look at it as feeding the good wolf. It's like, this is what is starting to fuel me up. It's like, I've gone through my gratitude journal. I've gone through 10 minutes of just sitting quiet and breathing and doing my meditation. And now I'm doing my plank, and I'm watching some fuel, but I'm not out of the starting gates yet. I'm still in the starting gates, just kind of like prepared. And then I do yoga for 10 to 15 minutes because, hey, I'm no spring chicken, and my body's been through hell and back. And so I got to take 10 to 15 minutes to get, loosened up. And then I train. And my routine is pretty disciplined. I train for at least 1 to 2 hours every morning. And it's a mixture of strength and then a lot of endurance training. I typically will Peloton or bike at least 20 miles, which takes me around an hour every single morning in zone 2. And that's just like the baseline of my fitness. And I'll run. Sometimes I just I get in a routine, and like last October, I went and ran 10 miles in the morning, and then I did that for like 3 months straight. Just ran 10 miles every morning, and then I still biked, and then I would bike in the evenings, and do whatever else. And it was just became part of, oh, I'm doing this now. Because I get on this, like, on this spectrum of, oh, I did this yesterday, I'm doing this today. And then it just kind of escalates from there.
Right.
And then after that, I stretch a little bit. I take a shower, and I always end it with a cold shower. And I stand there in the suck. I put a rainfall shower on our
Nice.
bathroom, and it has a built-in audio speaker, so I can listen to podcasts while I stand there and just kind of embrace the
That's
terribleness.
cool.
Because
Very
for
cool.
decades of doing a cold shower, it always sucks. I look at it as like kind of spraying on greatness, as in, and
Yeah,
honestly,
there you go.
nothing's been suck worse than that. When I get out of that and I come into a meeting, and it's like the wheels are falling off. It's kind of like, okay, I'm just kind of chill and just kind of relax, because nothing really sucks as bad as that. And John, I mean, you fell with the cold.
Oh yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah. I see our EA over on the side here. Will and I are always talking about the benefits of a cold shower, and I see her shaking her head. She's like, "No way, no way."
I took one before the show just to
Yep.
kind of get that dopamine hit, wake up,
great.
get
Yeah,
ready,
yeah,
get psyched for the
yeah.
show. All the time. It's like
sometimes-
just 1 minute, 2 minutes.
Yep.
It's just like,
And if
it
I'm
does suck.
traveling, I'll mix
What's
it up
that?
sometimes. I'll actually get up and walk right in and just take a cold shower in my hotel room, because it helps me to just like wake right up, and then I'll go into my routine. And I love that. But at home, I don't want to wake up folks and stuff. And so in my hotel room on a weekly basis, it's like, yeah, I'm going to go in there and do that.
Well, I
And
got to
then,
tell
and
you
then,
also,
I mean,
the cold shower in Dallas, where I know you travel to, is completely different than the cold shower here in Colorado Springs.
exactly. It's lukewarm at best. I used to travel to
Yeah.
New Zealand, and I'll tell you that coming off the Antarctica that's pretty cold. That's a cold
Oh, I
shower.
bet. I bet.
It's brutal. It's kind of like standing there like, oh boy, here we go.
Pins and needles.
Yeah, and here too, I make it extra hard. We got a lot of it's snowing again yesterday, and I have the window open, so I'm actually looking out at the cold as I take that cold shower. It makes it a
Oh,
little
wow.
worse.
Yeah. Hey, Will, I warned you, man. I warned you if you asked Jeff his morning routine.
I mean,
we
it sounds like
And
a
I
small
took it off
day.
established
every
that Jeff
single
is not an
day.
everyman?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
true.
so I have, and these are parameters. Like my family knows when we travel, my day revolves around my routine. I get up and do it, and at work, it's like I don't have meetings before a certain time or after a certain time of day because I also have an evening routine. Then I have breakfast. I typically have a shake around 10 or 11, sometimes noon. This is the way what I do this like time. What is it? Time restricted eating or whatever. It's honestly, I'm not super hungry until around then, and then I just look at it as fuel to like recover from my workout. That's what I do.
Yeah.
But I have an evening routine as well because I find I have to book in the day. In my evening routine, I do a second workout earlier, like around 5. And if I'm here in Colorado, I like to give my daily dose of nature. And if I can, we're going to time that with my wife. Just go for a walk.
Heck
Right now, I'm
yeah.
going to go for a walk. And by the way, gratitude journal. Back in my year when I couldn't eat, I did a gratitude walk. And this month, I'm actually thinking about introducing the gratitude ruck because why
I
not?
like it. I love it, man.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, the evening routine. I do a quick workout. I do a 10-minute meditation that is whatever. There's so many different apps that I use, and I'll do something like that. But I'll usually do that when I take a hot bath. I like to do that because it helps me to separate the day, and it helps me to bring my really to just get that breath. It's like this space within my day so that I can go down and bring my absolute best to my family and ask them about, hey, tell me about school, tell me about your workday, and actually listen and be present. Because otherwise, and Mark, you're probably the same way at this level when you're an executive. I mean, you're dealing with questions and decisions all day long, nonstop. And my brain, I'm just like, from listening, especially with listening with the intent to understand, if you do it right, you're probably exhausted. I'm pretty exhausted from it, which is why I do some sort of like 30-minute workout and I never feel like it. But it helps you get that energy flowing, kind of flush the system. Let me process, take a hot bath, Epsom salt bath, meditate, and then I can actually see my family and say, hey, what's going on? The thing I forgot in my morning routine, by the way, Will, is I do spend 30, 60 minutes reading every morning as well, because that's my thing.
Great.
I'm
Yeah.
super nerd. That's it.
Yeah.
Not at all, man.
Likewise.
Your banner, right? Well,
Yeah.
we've talked about your mindfulness practices and how it's benefited you guys. Could you share some of the challenges that you've had with practicing, either practicing meditation or living mindfully? Like you touched on at the beginning, Jeff, mindfulness is a way of being. Mindfulness is a way of living. Meditation is the practice. Could you touch on potentially some obstacles or challenges that you've had? And Mark, I'll kick it over to you first, and then we'll go over to you, Jeff.
Yeah, I found it hard to find my stride initially to create the setting, create the habit, create the discipline. I think the easy part for me was actually doing the breathing and the listening, but creating a setting where I was going to be able to let go and kind of drop some of those things swirling in your head. So I think for me, once I cracked the code on that, it became something. Not only was it something easier to pull off, but it became something I really look forward to. But I would say the biggest challenge initially for me was just creating the setting and the form and figuring out, is it an end of the day or a beginning of the day thing? Is it okay to do in the middle of the day? Do I limit myself to just the 5 or 10 minute one prescribed, or do I do something else later because it feels good?
Yeah.
So I think kind of finding my stride was key. I also think figuring out what voice and what kind of content you're consuming really works for you. And I did cheat on you a little bit, John. You weren't the only.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry. Will, you're still my guy too, but think, mixing it up a little bit,
Yeah.
and I think having a couple of different things that you consume. I found the ones that have maybe a little bit of wind noise or a chime in the background. John, you've got a really good 20-minute one out there on the Insight Timer, which is really good because it mixes a little bit of talk. It's got just enough talk and guidance and a little bit of other noises where I think for me, it kind of, it's the right setting. But sometimes I'm not up for 20 minutes, and that's okay too. So I think
Yeah,
finding
sure.
your stride, just like experimenting with different lengths and different
Yeah.
things that you hear, and then just figuring out, you have a little menu after that of ones that you can choose from based on where you're at. And I think exploring and trying different things is a good idea too. I didn't think about that going in. I just kind of arrived at that over the course of time.
Yeah, it's just like playing, right? Just trial and error. Like I'm going to try, morning, evening, middle of the day, like this meditation, this practice, and then how long did it take you to move through that process before, you were like, oh, this is my practice?
I would say at least 2 weeks, and maybe
Okay.
a little bit longer.
That's
I think,
great.
yeah. I think it took at least that amount of time because there was just time exploring different things as well as just figuring like different content, and then also setting and putting myself in a end of the day versus beginning of the day. When do I really want to do this? And then I found the group. The morning was best for me. Great way to start my day. And then
Yeah.
once I started connecting with my mom, that was an afternoon thing, and it's like the coolest thing to see, like a loved one want to sit down and get into a relaxed state together and have it not involve a glass of wine or a bottle of whatever. Although
Right.
sometimes that's involved too.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
And
thank you for that, Mark.
what about for you, Jeff?
Yeah, I think when I first got into meditation, I'm thinking back years ago, I first tried it when I wake up in the morning, and I would find I would fall back asleep. And so I had to do trial and error. And so going back to my morning routine of my gratitude journal, meditation and stuff, and reading, it's like that. It helps me to kind of like actually get some space and wake up. So it really helps me. Um, some of the things Mark said really resonated. I forget what I was going to piggyback on there, but what I have found too that things that help me is because on the weekends I do an LSD. I got this from Mark Divine, long slow distance, as in I
Yep.
might get up and my workout might be bike 25 miles, run 10 miles, bike another 25 miles, and throw in like a few hundred burpees in there as well. So it takes a few hours, and so
Just a few
and
hundred.
and yeah, it's but to me, I look at it's a couple things. It's one, it's like I'm training myself for mental toughness, and a lot of things I do is it's almost like meditative being in that. But what I've learned is like doing meditations before and after that, and kind of piggybacking that helps me to like get into the right frame of mind to actually go and do the training that I want to do, and it's really helpful. I did that years ago, and I did doing the 4x4x48. The first time I did it, I didn't meditate and stuff between it, and it was kind of terrible, and I couldn't really sleep. And the second time I did it, I kind of took it to the next level. Decided, well, I'll wear a 20-pound vest because nobody's ever done that. It's like that sounds ridiculous, so I'll do that. And what I found though is meditating before and after each run, it enabled me to calm down so I could go back to sleep and get to rest. And what I've noticed too is one of the challenges was just trying to slow down because I mean you're go go go. And I used to travel the whole world, all the time, and being you don't even know which way is up anymore with all the different time zones and stuff. And so
Sure.
my sleep was erratic. And what in 2020 was some of the great benefits. I mean, we look at 2020, it's like terrible. There's great benefits though, because it helped me. I couldn't travel like anybody else. And so I got to really take a deep, hard look at my sleep routines and things that were impacting it. And what I found was, that regardless that I wasn't traveling, there's still stress from the day, being a consultant and all this other stuff. And my sleep was erratic. And what I have found is when I am very mindful, and it's pretty much every day, about my meditation practice and being very aware and conscious of my breathing, especially going to bed at night, being aware of, not eating for many hours beforehand, helping my wife to understand you have to clarify kind of like, how to engage with each other. Is that, hey, after a certain time, please don't ask me about work or, tell me about your work because it starts to, you'll see it, like you'll start breathing heavily and then that impacts your ability to actually fall into sleep. And so what I find is regular meditation practices and breathing exercises helps me to get into a better sleep state. And even so, it's like even tracking every day and not drinking alcohol and stuff. It's like it can help you, but it still doesn't guarantee that you're going to. I look at it every single day. It's like, wow, what do I have to do, Whoop, to actually get like 100% recovery? It's like almost
Right.
impossible.
Yeah.
It's really hard, but also sleep is really a miracle drug. And I find that
Yeah.
mindfulness practices in general really has helped me to take that to the next level. Plus, it's what I'm doing to my body on a daily basis and stuff. It's like I need that recovery, and so
Yeah.
meditation and mindfulness is such a huge part of my everyday that I crave it. It's just like fuel for me. It's like I need that to take that space. And the
Yeah.
biggest challenge was to be able to just stop and, like Mark was saying, and find. And I have places around, in my hotel, I have things that I stay at the same place every single week. I got my thing, my system set up there. I have, places here that I set up, but I also like if I'm out in nature or something, just to sit. And when I talk about daily dose of nature, it's like Michael Easter talks about in his book, The Comfort Crisis, just getting out, no phone, no heads, you're not listening to podcasts or anything, and just actually being outside for at least 20 minutes. And that really helps to improve your mindfulness and really to calm the body down and just be more serene and relax. And it's just, yeah, just relax, chill. And I feel the way I approach my everyday now as a leader, as a father, as a husband is it's a 180 from the way I was, 10 years ago. Way more healthy and way more calm, way more aware, way more mindful, uh, way more chill, quite honestly. And I feel better at every level. And I couldn't imagine my life without these practices on a daily basis. And I'm human as everybody else. Like my mind wanders, and I just go back to what's that one simple thing is just like just focusing on your breath, and I think that's just so crucial.
Coming back to the moment, I'm glad you talked so importantly or glaringly about sleep and how important sleep is. And we have a guest. I think it's one of our last guests this season coming on talking about sleep. We had another episode, and and the Whoop, like you mentioned, really has made me more mindful of sleep. And especially when for you, Jeff, when you're putting so much output physically, if you don't have that sleep, you will injure yourself. And is there anybody, even if you don't have this like high output of like a massive amount of energy being burned through different types of like cardiovascular or weightlifting or something like that, it's like it's just so important to really protect your sleep. And I also like how you have found that mindfulness in the practices, whether it's a meditation or a breath work or just being out in nature, helps to relax the body enough so you can get a good restorative night's sleep. It's so important. I mean, for the last several, I've just been so much more. I get up at 4:30 as well, and just I need to get to sleep by like 9:30 at night typically during the week.
Oh.
The weekend, I kind of fuck off a little bit, but during the week, I do. I just I mean, like I gotta let loose. You know what I mean? It's like I can't be so rigid. I think that's part of my mindfulness practice is the effing off, weekends a little bit and sleeping a lot, but then, but still honoring my practice when I do eventually get up on like a Saturday or Sunday at like 8:30 or like, 8 o'clock in the morning instead of 4:30. But thanks for sharing sleep, about the importance of sleep, Jeff.
I just want to jump on that too, piggyback, if you will. I just finished up a course on sleep, and it's by another fellow SEAL who's become a sleep scientist, Rob Sweetman, who's going to be coming on the show later this season. And mindfulness, for me, funny enough, or rather meditation normally, like I get super relaxed, but I come out of a meditation recharged. And going into the morning, or I'll meditate at lunch, and I'll go into the afternoon recharged. And I got to the point where meditating at night was actually recharging me. And for me personally, back then, but before I took this course, it was actually giving me energy going into sleep, and I actually had trouble sleeping. Now, what I found was I was doing the wrong meditations. And what I've specifically started doing was yoga nidra meditations, or I rest meditations. They're one and the same. And those yoga nidra meditations really calm me down going into the night and allow me to fall asleep faster, so that's the latency, and then stay asleep. Or if I get up to go to use the bathroom in the middle of the night, I will do a short yoga nidra, just kind of in my own mind, and it allows me to go back to sleep, because that's where I sometimes struggle, is when I wake up in the middle of the night. Then I come back and it's all quiet. My mind just starts wandering all over the place, and it's tough to get back to sleep. But the yoga nidra practices have really helped me. And then I love that you mentioned Michael Easter too, Jeff. We're hoping to have him on the show. He has said yes. His people have not, but he has said yes to the show. So we're hoping to get him on. And I've got some ideas on the Deliberate Discomfort Challenge, Michael Easter, the Comfort Crisis, and his book, and some ways to potentially tie Men Talking Mindfulness into a movement down the road, but I won't share too much about that just yet. So anyhow, I know we're past the top of the hour. Let's jump into one kind of final question for you guys, if you're okay with that, Will. I want to talk about, for our listeners who may be new to mindfulness, maybe new to meditation, and I know you guys have covered some life hacks in this conversation, but for you guys each, on your own journey towards self-awareness and personal growth, what is your top tip for anyone getting into this, whether it's mindfulness related or not? What's the top tip to gain that self-awareness and or personal growth? Jeff, I'll start with you.
Yeah, honestly, I would raising our self-awareness is so key. It's kind of like, you drop somebody off in the middle of the mountains here in Colorado and say, hey, you got to get back to Colorado Springs. What's the first thing you do besides flip out? Probably is you got to figure out where you are, right? And so you got to figure out where you are, but a lot of figure out where you are requires feedback. What's the saying? Feedback is the breakfast of champions. Because a lot of times when you take, if you're doing an assessment around emotional intelligence or leadership, doing leadership 360s. Paske, you've probably done a bunch of these as well. We're doing them right now in my organization. And what happens though is there's always a disconnect around self-awareness, because we judge ourselves by our intent, whereas others judge us by our behavior. And it's so key. And so I think getting that feedback, getting and being open to receiving that feedback, and not just receiving it calmly and be able to process it, but be able to act upon it, is really so crucial to growing yourself in mindfulness, emotional intelligence, and leadership, whatever it is you're trying to do in life, whether it's fitness or anything like that. It's like as I always say, there's no great athlete, no great actress or actor, out there who doesn't have a coach, somebody who is there, giving them that instant feedback, kind of like that rock climber falling off the cliff. And we all need that in our life, and I look at in my in kind of like my second half of life here with my wife now. She's been that kind of guiding light when I didn't want to hear that type of feedback, as far as, and now it's and now I accept it. It's really helped me, because she can be very candid. And whereas I didn't receive that before, but it's helped me in so many ways to grow, and it still helps me today. It's like I'll ask for her feedback. She'll watch this podcast, and then I'll ask her. It's like, hey, give me your feedback, and she will. And sometimes it's hard to hear. It's like, oh my goodness, and but at the same time, it's like, all right, I can take that and I can act upon it, because we don't know what we don't know. And I'll sit here and judge myself by my intent on what I thought I portrayed or the story I thought I shared. And then she will judge me on the behavior and what she actually heard. And so we really need that. I think that's one of the key things, when it comes to developing mindfulness in this practice is one is be intentional about it, hold yourself accountable. It's like what Mark has done is getting involved with a group with the Deliberate Discomfort Challenge. I think that's really crucial as well, doing stuff like that. I have not done it. I'm very aware of it, and the folks. One of our good buddies, Clint Musgrove's been texting me all morning because he's getting ready to wrap it up. He's all excited. So
I saw him text over here in the messages. So he's on LinkedIn with us, messaging
awesome.
while we're doing this.
I think that's crucial. Is just like we said before. It's like get a group, find your tribe, find
Yeah.
somebody to hold
Yeah.
each other accountable when it comes to doing these things, because it's not easy. It's uncomfortable. It's hard to like slow down and just be still with yourself, with your own thoughts, with your own breath. It's really hard to do that because
Yeah.
we live in a super fast-paced world. It's like everything in America is about, it's just like right here, right now. It's like I can order something on Amazon and have it this afternoon
Right.
if I want to. It's like
Right.
we live in this world of impatience, and mindfulness is really about learning patience and just being accepting and just being
Yeah.
right, living right here for the present moment, right now. And it
Yeah.
can be just uncomfortable at times. So lean into that discomfort because it's magical. It really
Who
is.
do we
Yeah.
have on recently, Will, that said mindfulness is patience? I think was that Dr. Mosley, or it may have been Dr. Mark Burton. But either way,
Yeah. It
mindfulness
might have
and
been Burton.
patience,
Yeah.
they,
But
they
yeah,
go hand in
exactly.
hand 100%. I love that
Yeah.
you brought that up. I also find it funny, Jeff, that you mentioned how candid your wife is, yet just about 30 minutes ago, you mentioned that you told your wife not to talk to you for the first 3 hours. So it
Because she's
sounds
so
like you both
candid.
were very candid.
Yeah.
So
And we live in this world, Jeff, you're talking about, like, I mean, not just the fast pace of the world, but also it really tries to pigeonhole us into deeper individuality, which I think is important for self-expression, but also, like, you know, mindfulness and meditation and all these practices, as I continually practice, reminds me of how incredibly important it is to be reminded and to be connected to other people. And like you said, it's like I don't get that reflection unless, I don't get an accurate reflection, an accurate assessment. I don't get that candid feedback on my own. Even if I'm journaling, if I'm meditating, if I'm talking to myself in the mirror, to have someone else like mirror back to you, like what their experience is of what was in that moment of you, and get an honest assessment is just so valuable to develop as a human being. Not just even your mindfulness practice, but because you're a mindfulness person, because you can actually listen with intent, because you can ground yourself in patience instead of like turning into the redheaded guy in oh God, I
Inside Out.
forgot the movie. Inside Out.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. You always
Yeah.
catch me, man. So nice. Thank you. And
Right here,
You're right,
man.
John. Or Will, and you remind me,
yeah,
it's I use an example out like our cell phones here. It's like, every week I get on a plane and you're asked to put your cell phone in airplane mode. You get off that plane, you take it out of airplane mode, and it's going to find, this connection. If it doesn't find a connection, it's not super useful. I mean, you can run some apps, you might be able to play a movie you have, but it's not super helpful. And I find a lot of that also is kind of like when you have a low EQ or low mindfulness, you're not connecting. You're kind of walking around in airplane mode. And
yeah.
and
There you
really to
go.
be a more effective human being in all aspects of your life, it's like you got to plug in and connect with others and build
Yeah,
relationships. And it takes being mindful to do that, to really operate in 5G, quite
I
honestly.
love
yeah.
that, man.
Yeah, high
That's great.
connection, high fidelity,
Yeah,
yeah, vibrancy, it's like that's we thrive as people when we're together. If
exactly.
we create the right container, if we have the right mindset, if we are working for a common goal, or just the basic common goal of being kind to one another, but being honest with one another, getting each other's back, holding each other to their highest esteem, like with so much greatness is waiting to be had when you connect in an authentic way with somebody that really, really cares about you. And I was looking,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I love that
thank you,
analogy
Jeff.
too, man.
Love it.
Yeah.
All right, Mark, back over to you to wrap it up, brother.
Wow. How about, I mean, Jeff with the quotable mic drop there.
You got to follow that up.
I mean, we already established he doesn't really belong on this particular podcast. So
I mean, I was like, why, this is not a good guest, John.
if
Jeff,
anyone
I'm just kidding. He is.
who's listening out there, it's pretty clear Jeff's on the wrong
I'm
one.
just kidding. I'm just kidding.
But Clint, if you're out there listening and you're finishing up the Deliberate Discomfort Challenge, good job, brother, man. It's not easy. That challenge is every day, a couple workouts, read a book a week, reach out to people every day, write a gratitude journal. But probably the most impactful part was, for me, the meditation part, and actually the hardest of all those things, despite having to do all those workouts and other hard stuff. But I think, John, I was thinking about a while back, you hit me with something on LinkedIn, and it was an article about giving yourself grace. And we had just spoken one-on-one like the week before, and that topic came up. And I was surprised that you had remembered it. And you said, hey, this sounds like something to pay attention to, Mark Paske. And you hit me with it on LinkedIn. And I think that's at the core of what Jeff was talking about, is to be able to take that feedback, especially when you told someone they can't talk to you for 3 hours, then they're definitely going to get the feedback. It's going to be
They're like waiting right
robust.
there for 3 hours to pop up on their watch.
It's going to be robust. So I think to be able to be in a position in your personal life or in a work setting to receive the feedback, you have to be able to give yourself some grace. And I think that's one of the things that I would say mindfulness and meditation really did for me. And I would say I'd probably earlier in my life, or earlier in my career, not that long ago, probably had a defensive reaction to most feedback that was unsolicited or solicited. And, as part of the reason why I was drawn to the podcast was the name of it, Men Talking Mindfulness. I felt like maybe that's a place where I can explore what feels maybe soft, or I feel vulnerable in doing so. But through exploring the vulnerability, you find strength in yourself. And I think to feel good about yourself enough to take that feedback, it takes the ability to also give yourself some grace. Maybe you didn't take it that well. Maybe I did respond defensively. Okay, that's all right, man. Sometimes you're going to feel that way. But to just keep chipping away at it and give yourself some grace, give some other people around you some grace. And that helps us move forward with getting too locked in and entrenched there. So I'd say that's my kind of closing thought is, don't be afraid to give yourself some grace, but also don't be afraid to try.
Oh man,
Well,
I tell you, you followed up that mic drop pretty well, brother. I love that.
I know,
man.
very good. Well, how did you give yourself? Because this would be the very last thing, Mark. I'm sorry, because we love meditation on the show, and you mentioned meditation, your struggles. How did you implement grace in your meditation practice, or what were those obstacles or struggles within meditation, and how did they, begin to change by just showing up and practicing?
I'll tell you a quick funny story. So before my dad passed, I had both my parents doing meditations with me, and we were at the New Jersey shore at a beach house, pretty pleasant setting, seagulls and waves crashing, and we were sitting there. We were doing one, and it had a pretty rigid requirement on your posture. You had to put your arms fully extended in such a way where it was actually uncomfortable. But like my parents are pretty tough, and none of us were saying this doesn't feel comfortable. So we did 20 minutes of this brutally uncomfortable posture. None of us got anything out of the meditation. So afterwards we said, we're definitely not doing that again, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's an example, right, of giving yourself some grace. We tried it. That one didn't work for us. I don't even remember who it was. It was just someone that I had found and we were kind of experimenting with. And so I think that's probably a good example. It's just, work yourself through that. Figure out if that didn't work, what does work for me? What kind of voice, what kind of sounds, how long, how much talking? Are they explaining things to me? Do I want to be educated? Do I like that kind of approach, or do I just want to be guided through some breathing?
Mm-hmm.
And at times you're looking for different things. So again, I think you have to have a little bit of a menu for yourself, like a diner menu, where maybe you want breakfast at one meal and maybe you want dinner at another meal, but just have that repertoire ready to go. And I think if you do that and you experiment a little bit, you'll find that. But I thought I was at first, you're like, I'm doing it wrong. I must not be able to breathe properly because my arms and elbows hurt from this ridiculous rigid posture that I'm in. But then just to kind of let go of that afterwards, especially when my dad said it, because then all the pressure was off.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, no, thank you for that, Mark. Yeah, it's just, but I admire the consistency. Just keep showing up. Just keep showing up. Like you can play with different types of, guided meditations. I think it's worthwhile for everybody to eventually just set a timer, sit and take one practice that you've learned, one practice that really speaks to you, and just do your own meditation sometimes without a guide. But I think there's a good interplay between both of them, because I could learn a lot through a guided meditation, but I like being on my own and with a particular technique, and that's been very helpful as well. So yeah, thanks for that information.
Yeah. And guys, thanks again for being here with us. We'll jump into the closing meditation here in just a second. But for our audience, if they had any questions about anything that you've covered today and you feel comfortable with them reaching out for you, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you? Jeff?
Yeah, for me, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I try to get back to everybody on LinkedIn. There is a delay. It's usually a couple of days, but I'll get back to you. And also I'm on Instagram. My handle is montisman, montis.man, means mountain man. Long story, won't share it here. I'm also on Facebook.
Right on, man. And for you, Mark?
Thank you.
I'm pretty limited to LinkedIn from a social standpoint, so that's the best place to get me. Although in the Deliberate Discomfort Challenge, I had to do social posts, which I did after opening up a Facebook account, and that was also cool. But I did it, and I got some good
You did
feedback
great.
actually. Who appreciated it. So yeah, LinkedIn for me.
Right on. Well, guys, again, thank you for being here with us today, and for our audience, thanks for tuning in. And you know, I normally wrap it up with this, but I also lose some listeners in the final meditation, so I want to make sure I put this out before the final meditation. If you've enjoyed today's show and you got something from it, share it. Share it with your friends, your family, whoever else you think may benefit from it. And please give us that review and subscribe to the podcast to get access to that exclusive content. And then go on YouTube and subscribe over there too. And that's just youtube.com/@ Men Talking Mindfulness. All right, so that all said, that gross stuff all out of the way, let's get into the final meditation, and I'll lead that. And it's just going to be just exactly what we started with, nothing more than just some simple breath work. And as Will said at the beginning, you can do this just about anywhere, anytime. And if closing your eyes is both comfortable and safe, and by safe I mean physically safe and emotionally safe, then I invite you to close your eyes. But otherwise, just keep looking at what you're looking at and just bring your attention to your breath. And we'll start by emptying our lungs, bringing your navel to your spine, imagining squeezing out your lungs and holding empty at the bottom. Deep breath in, ideally through your nose, all the way up. Hold at the top and relax, letting it go, letting it go, letting it all go. Holding empty at the bottom. Nice deep breath in, filling up all the way from the bottom to the top. Hold at the top and relax, release, release, release. Number 3 coming up. Deep breath in. Notice the sensation of breathing in as you fill those lungs all the way to the top. Hold at the top. Appreciate that fullness and let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Holding empty at the bottom. Number 4 coming up. Deep breath. Feel your breath. Notice your breath. Holding full at the top. And let it go. Release. Relax. Holding empty at the bottom. Last one. Deep breath in. Filling from the bottom to the top. Extra sip at the top. Hold and release. And as you release, go ahead and bring those micro movements in. Roll your shoulders back. Move your head around. And gents, this has been so awesome being with you. I really appreciate you guys' time. I appreciate everything that you've shared with us. And Will, thank you, brother, for your time. And for our audience, thank you all. And until next time, peace.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you walk away with some new tools and insights to guide you on your life journey. New episodes are being published every week, so please join us again for some meaningful discussion. For more information, please check out mentalkingmindfulness.com.